I opened the dresser drawer with shaking hands. The room still smelled like Grandma Eleanor, lavender powder and old books. We had just come back from her funeral, and the family was still downstairs eating and talking like nothing in the world had changed. But something had changed. Everything had changed. My name is Michelle Whitaker. I am 26 years old. For 3 years I had been Grandma Eleanor's shadow, driving her to doctor's appointments when her hand shook too badly to hold a steering wheel, cleaning her sapphire ring when her swollen fingers could no longer manage it, reading aloud to her on the evenings her eyes grew too tired for books. I never did any of it for payment. I never did it to be seen. I did it because she was my grandmother, and I loved her, and some debts cannot be settled in money. Grandma had promised me her sapphire ring months before she passed. She pressed it into my palm one quiet afternoon and whispered, "One day, this will be yours, sweetheart." I had carried those words with me like something sacred. So the moment I could slip away from the noise downstairs, I went straight to her bedroom and opened the velvet-lined drawer where she always kept it. I was not looking for payment. I was not looking for recognition. I just wanted the one thing she had told me, with her own lips, was mine. But the velvet box was there. And the ring was not. I stood there staring at the empty box for what felt like a very long time. My fingers went cold. I told myself there had to be a simple reason. Maybe Grandma had moved it. Maybe someone was keeping it safe for me. Then I heard footsteps in the doorway and turned around. My brother Ryan leaned against the frame with his arms crossed. He was 29 and had always been the kind of person who walked into a room like he already owned it. He looked at the empty velvet box in my hands and did not look surprised at all. That was the first thing I noticed. He was not surprised. He already knew. "Don't look so shocked," he said, his voice flat and cold. "Grandma's ring was family property. You had no claim to it." The words landed like a slap. I asked him what he had done with it. He shrugged like I had asked something small and unimportant. He said he had sold it. I could not breathe right. He said he needed money for his upcoming wedding and that Grandma would have wanted the ring to help the family. Then he said something that I have never been able to forget. He said I only thought I deserved the ring because I had played nurse for attention. He walked away while I stood there holding the empty box like a wound. I did not go back downstairs right away. I sat on the edge of Grandma's bed and pressed the velvet box against my chest. I wanted to cry, but something harder than sadness was building inside me. When I finally came down, the family was gathered in the kitchen. I found Ryan by the counter and asked, quietly at first, how he could sell the one thing Grandma had specifically promised me. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A real one. In front of everyone. He said, "Michelle, Grandma was old. She said a lot of things near the end." Our Aunt Patricia, a tall woman who always thought keeping the peace was the same as doing the right thing, touched my shoulder and told me grief makes people selfish and that I should let it go. I felt the humiliation rise up my neck. I was standing in the same house where I had helped Grandma bathe, reminded her to take her medicine, and cooked her meals when she was too weak to stand. Then Ryan's fiancée Claire stepped forward. She had been quiet until that moment. She looked uncomfortable, but she spoke anyway. She said Ryan had not sold the ring to pay for the wedding. He had traded it toward her new engagement ring. I turned and looked at Claire's hand. Grandma's sapphire was shining on another woman's finger. A week passed. I tried to stay away, but Aunt Patricia called and said the family needed peace, so I went to dinner. Claire wore the ring openly, turning her hand so the stone caught the light. Ryan announced that he and Claire had decided to use the ring as a symbol of family legacy. I felt sick sitting there listening to him say those words. When I quietly told the table that the ring had been promised to me, Ryan leaned back in his chair and smiled at everyone before looking at me. He said, "Then show us proof." The room went completely silent. I had no documents. No recording. No witness except a woman who was no longer alive to speak for herself. Ryan let the silence hang there for a moment, then said, "Exactly," and moved on like I was nothing. I left the table before the tears came. I would not let him see me cry. But as I passed Claire on my way out, I slowed down. Something about the ring looked different. The band had been polished bright and new. But the inside of the band, The part curled against her finger looked untouched. I remembered something Grandma once told me on a quiet Sunday afternoon. She said, "The truth is hidden where vain people never look." I stopped walking. And I made a decision. The next morning, I went back to Grandma's house before anyone else arrived. I was not looking for the ring anymore. I was looking for Ryan's mistake. I checked the kitchen, the hallway table, and the recycling bin near the back door. Then I moved to the garage. In the trash beside the old shelving unit, I found a torn paper bag. It was brown and crumpled, but the logo on the side was still readable. Klein & Sons Fine Jewelry. It was a family-owned shop that had been on the same downtown corner for over 40 years. I reached inside the bag and pulled out a small folded receipt. Ryan's name was printed clearly at the top. I held it under the garage light and read every word carefully. It did not say sale. It said restoration and resizing consultation. My hands were steady, but my heart was not. Ryan had not simply sold the ring and lost it forever. He had taken it somewhere to be changed. That meant the ring could still be traced. That meant there were records. I folded the receipt and tucked it into my purse like it was made of glass. Then I got in my car and drove downtown. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, looking at the display case full of diamonds glittering in the morning sun. Grandma's truth was somewhere inside that shop. I pushed open the door to Klein & Sons and a small bell rang overhead. The shop was quiet and warm, with wooden display cases and soft yellow lighting. An older man with silver hair came out from the back room and smiled. I said Grandma Eleanor's name, Eleanor Whitaker, and his face changed immediately. It softened in the way that people's faces do when they remember someone they genuinely liked. He introduced himself as Mr. Samuel Klein. He said he remembered Grandma Eleanor clearly. She had brought the sapphire ring in every few years to have it cleaned. He said she never treated it like a luxury item. She treated it like a promise. I asked if my brother Ryan had recently brought the ring in. Mr. Klein paused. He became careful, the way honest people do when they are trying to be fair without being careless. He said he could not easily share private customer details. I placed the empty velvet box on the counter between us. I explained what had happened. His face darkened as I spoke. When I finished, he looked at me quietly for a moment and asked one question. He asked whether my grandmother had ever mentioned an engraving. I froze. In all the years I had helped clean that ring, I had never seen an engraving. I told him no. He nodded slowly and said, "Your brother asked us to remove it." The room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. Mr. Klein explained what Ryan had asked for when he brought the ring in. Ryan wanted it resized for Claire's finger and asked if the inside of the band could be smoothed out because the engraving looked, in Ryan's exact words, old and messy. Mr. Klein had refused. He said the engraving was part of the ring's history and it was not his place to erase someone's words. I asked what the engraving said. Mr. Klein walked to the back room and came out holding an old printed photograph from the shop's archive. It was slightly blurry, the kind of image taken years ago on old equipment. But the engraving was clear enough. I leaned forward and read the words carved inside the band. "For Michelle, when she is ready. E.W." I pressed my hand over my mouth. The initials were Grandma Eleanor's. Eleanor Whitaker. My name was inside that ring. It had always been inside that ring. Mr. Klein told me something more. Grandma Eleanor had requested that engraving herself 2 years before she passed. She had come in alone and paid for it in cash. She had not told anyone. She had just done it quietly, the way she did most of the things that mattered. I looked up at Mr. Klein and asked if he could prove it. He met my eyes and said, "Yes." That evening, I took a photo of the engraving image and sent it to Ryan. I kept the message simple. No accusations. No long explanation. Just a photograph. His reply came in less than 2 minutes. "Where did you get that?" Then a second message, right after. "Do not start something you can't finish." I set my phone face down on the kitchen table and breathed. That night, Ryan came to my apartment. I heard him coming up the stairs long before he knocked, because he was not trying to be quiet. He pounded on my door and his voice was sharp through the wood. He accused me of trying to ruin his engagement, of trying to embarrass him in front of Claire's family, of stirring up trouble during a time that was supposed to be happy. I kept the chain lock on. I did not open the door more than a crack. I could see one eye, the tight line of his jaw. Ryan said the engraving meant nothing. He said Grandma had been confused when she had it done. I said, calmly and clearly, then you won't mind explaining why you tried to have it removed. Something moved across his face. Not anger this time. Something different. Something smaller. Fear. He was quiet for 3 full seconds before he spoke again. He said, "You think people will choose you over me? They never have." He walked away. But I noticed his voice shook a little when he said it. Ryan moved fast. Before I could reach anyone in the family to explain what I had found, he had already called them. By the next morning, Aunt Patricia, 2 cousins, and my own mother were sending me messages asking me to stop attacking Ryan during his wedding season. Ryan's version of the story had spread overnight. He told everyone I was trying to steal Claire's engagement ring out of jealousy. Claire did not post anything publicly, but she quietly called relatives and cried about how I wanted to take the ring right off her hand. Within 2 days, I had gone from being the person who cared for Grandma to being the bitter, unstable sister who could not handle her brother's happiness. The worst message came from my mother. She wrote that Ryan had always been difficult, but that I was making things ugly. I sat with that message for a long time. My mother knew how many nights I had spent at Grandma's house. She knew I had given up weekends, holidays, and a job promotion to make sure Grandma was not alone. And still, when Ryan told his version, she believed it first. I looked at the engraving photo on my phone. Then I looked at the medication schedule I had kept for Grandma, a small notebook full of my handwriting, dates, dosages, and little reminders. I placed them side by side on my table and whispered to no one, "Not this time." I stopped trying to defend myself out loud and started building something solid instead. I opened the notebook I had kept during Grandma's last 2 years. It was a plain blue spiral notebook, worn at the corners, full of my handwriting. Medication times. Doctor appointment dates. Grocery lists I had written while she talked. And small notes she had dictated to me when her hands shook too much to write. I turned the pages slowly, looking for anything useful. Between 2 pages near the back, I found a folded piece of paper that I did not remember putting there. I unfolded it carefully. It was in Grandma's handwriting, shaky but clear. It said, "Ask Mr. Klein if the engraving is deep enough. I want Michelle to have no trouble proving it." I sat back in my chair. Grandma had known. She had not been confused or careless. She had looked ahead and seen exactly what kind of trouble might come. She had planned for it. She had left me a path to follow even after she was gone. I wiped my eyes and kept reading the notebook. Near the front, I found something else. I had written down a date and a note in my own handwriting from about 2 years ago. Drove Grandma to an appointment. She did not say what it was for. I had thought nothing of it at the time. Now I looked at the address I had written. Harris and Lowe Estate Law. I called Harris and Lowe the next morning and asked to speak with whoever had handled Eleanor Whittaker's estate. The receptionist put me through to Ms. Dana Harris, a steady and careful woman who chose each word like it mattered. She was polite but cautious at first. She explained that estate documents involved privacy rules and that she could not share details freely. I understood. I told her I was not there to cause trouble. I showed her 2 things, the photograph of the engraving and Grandma's handwritten note. The change in her expression was small but real. She became more serious. She asked me to sit down. She explained that Grandma Eleanor had created something called a personal property memorandum, which was a document attached to her will that listed specific belongings and who should receive them. It was signed, dated, and had 2 witnesses. I held my breath and asked if the sapphire ring was listed. Ms. Harris opened the file folder on her desk and ran her finger along the page. Then she stopped. Her expression shifted. The ring was listed. And it was listed for me. But then she turned to the next page, and the next, and her jaw tightened just slightly. She looked up and said that the copy of the memorandum Ryan had shared with the family was missing 1 page. She closed the file folder and said she needed to check the original document kept in the office records. Ms. Harris went into the back room and I sat in the quiet office listening to a clock on the wall. When she came back, she placed the original memorandum on the desk between us. The missing page was there. It clearly named me, Michelle Whitaker, as the intended recipient of the sapphire ring. The memorandum was signed by Grandma Eleanor, dated, and witnessed by two people whose signatures I did not recognize but whose names were printed clearly beneath their signatures. Ryan had not simply overlooked the page. He had given the family an incomplete version. Whether he had removed that page on purpose or made sure no one saw it, the result was the same. Grandma's final wishes had been hidden. Ms. Harris explained my options carefully. She said I should not make public accusations yet. The right path was through the probate court, where I could file a formal notice and request the ring's return based on the memorandum. The legal process would force everything into the open in a way that could not be denied or twisted. I agreed. I was not interested in screaming at family dinners anymore. I was interested in the truth arriving somewhere Ryan could not control. Ms. Harris printed the necessary forms and walked me through each page. Before I left, she looked at me and said, "Once this is filed, your brother will know you are not bluffing." 2 days after the legal notice was filed, Claire appeared at my workplace. I saw her through the glass door before she came in, and I expected anger. I expected her to defend Ryan the way she had been doing for weeks. Instead, she looked pale and unsettled, like someone who had just heard a sound they could not explain. She asked me quietly if Ryan had really known about the engraving all along. I did not answer with words. I spread 3 things on my desk in front of her: the engraving photograph, the jeweller's receipt with Ryan's name on it, and Grandma's handwritten note about making sure the proof was deep enough to find. Claire looked at all 3 without speaking. Then she told me what Ryan had been saying to her privately. He had told her that Grandma wanted them to have the ring because I had already taken enough by living so close to Grandma and controlling her time. He told her I had been manipulative, that I had kept other family members away from Grandma on purpose, that I had built a false closeness with a vulnerable old woman to gain her trust. Claire looked ashamed as she repeated these things, like she could hear how they sounded now that she was saying them out loud. She stood up to leave. Before she reached the door, she turned back and said quietly, "Ryan told me the engraving was just your initials from some old repair." She left without making me any promises. But she left looking like a woman who had started asking different questions. Ryan hosted a small engagement party at an upscale restaurant the following Saturday. I almost did not go. But Ms. Harris had advised me to behave calmly in family settings and avoid giving Ryan any reason to paint me as unstable or dramatic. So I dressed carefully, arrived on time, and sat near the end of the table. Ryan gave a speech about loyalty and legacy. He talked about honoring the family's history and building something lasting. Then he raised Claire's hand and told everyone that the ring represented Grandma's blessing on their future together. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure the person beside me could hear it. Aunt Patricia leaned over and squeezed my arm. She whispered, "Don't ruin this." I sat still. I kept my face neutral. And then something happened that I had not expected. Claire gently pulled her hand away from Ryan's. She did not do it harshly. She did it the way you put down something you are not sure you should be holding. She smiled at the guests and said, "Maybe we should not make the ring such a big part of tonight." Ryan's smile stayed on his face, but it tightened around the edges. I watched him closely for the rest of dinner. He laughed louder than usual after that. He refilled his glass twice. By the time dessert arrived, Claire and Ryan had not spoken directly to each other in over an hour. 3 days after the legal notice reached him, Ryan called me. He did not open with an apology or an explanation. He opened with an offer. He said he would give me money. Not the ring, because he said taking the ring from Claire before the wedding would be unfair to her. But money. He said I could name a number. His voice had a business tone to it, the kind people use when they want to make something messy sound like a clean transaction. I told him no. He went quiet for a moment. Then his voice changed. He said Grandma had always loved him more because he was the one who would carry the family name forward. He said things like that, casual and cutting, as though he believed them completely. I had heard versions of that idea my whole life. That Ryan's accomplishments mattered more because of who he was, not because of what he had done. I told him the truth as plainly as I could. I said Grandma had not chosen me because of my name. She had chosen me because I had shown up. Every appointment. Every bad night. Every quiet afternoon when she just needed someone nearby. Ryan did not respond to that. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then his voice hardened again and he warned me that if I kept going, he would tell the whole family I had manipulated Grandma into changing her will. He ended the call before I could answer. Ryan's next move was the cruelest one. He began telling people that Grandma had not been mentally well when she signed the memorandum or ordered the engraving. He said she had been confused in her final years and that the documents did not reflect her true wishes. The whispers spread quickly through the family. People who had not been there for a single one of Grandma's hard days suddenly had opinions about her mental state. I was devastated, not just for myself but for Grandma. Ryan was not only stealing a ring. He was stealing her clarity, her intention, and her dignity. I went back to Ms. Harris and explained what was happening. She was not surprised. She said this was a common tactic in estate disputes. We needed to address it with evidence, not emotion. She helped me request Grandma's medical records through the proper legal channels. Grandma's doctor provided a formal written statement confirming that at the time she created the personal property memorandum and requested the engraving at Klein & Sons, she had been mentally competent and capable of making personal decisions. The letter was dated, signed, and clear. It cut directly through Ryan's story. He could no longer hide behind the idea that Grandma had been confused. But then Ms. Harris found something in the records that stopped us both. Ryan had visited Grandma 3 days after the will was updated. He had asked her to reconsider giving the ring to me. Grandma had refused. And there might be a witness. Ms. Harris gave me a name, Mrs. Alvarez. She was Grandma's next-door neighbor, a small, sharp woman who had lived in the same house for 30 years and noticed everything. I drove to the old neighborhood and knocked on her door on a Tuesday afternoon. She answered with reading glasses pushed up on her head and flour on her apron. When I told her why I was there, she brought me inside and sat me at her kitchen table. She remembered the day Ryan came to the house very clearly. She had made a pot of soup and walked over to bring some to Grandma the way she often did. When she reached the side gate, she heard raised voices through the open kitchen window. Ryan's voice and Grandma's voice. She had stopped and listened because she was concerned. She said Ryan told Grandma that I did not deserve the ring because I was just trying to look like a good grandchild. Mrs. Alvarez paused there and pressed her lips together before continuing. She said Grandma's reply had stayed with her. Grandma said, "Michelle earned love, Ryan. You keep demanding rewards." Then she heard the back door slam hard enough to rattle the window frame. Ryan had stormed out. Mrs. Alvarez had gone inside and found Grandma sitting quietly at the table, not upset, just tired. I asked if she would be willing to write all of this down in a statement. She looked me in the eye and said yes without hesitating. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Claire. She said, "We need to talk before the wedding." Claire chose a small cafe near the park, a quiet place with round wooden tables and soft music. She was already there when I arrived, sitting with a folder in front of her and a coffee she had not touched. She did not waste time with small talk. She opened the folder and turned it toward me. Inside were screenshots of messages Ryan had sent to a close friend. In one message, Ryan wrote that Claire's family would be impressed by an heirloom ring and that it would make the whole engagement feel more meaningful. In another message, further down the thread, he wrote that I would cry but get over it. Then there was one more. I read it slowly to make sure I understood it correctly. Ryan had written, "I just need the engraving gone before anyone notices." Claire said she had found the messages 2 nights ago when Ryan left his laptop open on the kitchen counter and walked out to take a phone call. She had not been snooping. She had seen her name on the screen and leaned in. Then she kept reading. She told me she had not come to my workplace or to this cafe only for my sake. She had come because she understood something that frightened her. If Ryan could lie this carefully about a dead woman's ring, about a handwritten name carved in gold, he could lie about anything. She looked down at her hand. Then she reached up, slid the ring off her finger, and placed it on the table between us. I held Grandma's ring for the first time since the funeral. I turned it slowly in my fingers and looked at the band, smooth and polished on the outside, unchanged on the inside. I have not put it on yet. It did not feel like the right moment for that. Claire sat across from me looking like a person who had just set down something very heavy. She said she wanted to return the ring quietly and call off the wedding without a public scene. I told her I understood, and I appreciated it, but we needed to do this through the legal process so that no one could accuse either of us of acting improperly. She agreed. The ring would go to Ms. Harris to be held safely while the probate confirmation moved forward. I arranged it that afternoon. But before the day was over, Ryan knew the ring was gone. I do not know how. Maybe Claire told him. Maybe he noticed it missing when she came home. Either way, he called me within hours, his voice completely different from every careful, calculated conversation we had before. He was furious. He accused me of manipulating Claire and threatened to report the ring stolen to the police. My lawyer responded immediately in writing. The ring was being held lawfully pending probate verification and documentation of ownership. Ryan could not touch it without going through the court. But he did not accept that quietly. By the next morning, he had filed a legal objection claiming that Claire and I had conspired against him. The first probate hearing was held on a grey Thursday morning. Ryan walked in looking composed and dressed carefully, like a person who believed appearances were everything. He sat on his side of the room with his attorney and kept his expression wounded and patient, the kind of look designed to make a judge feel sorry for him. He told the court that I had always been jealous of him and that Claire had been emotionally pressured into giving up the ring. He said the whole situation was built on a family misunderstanding that I had turned into a legal attack. Then Ms. Harris presented our evidence. She laid it out one piece at a time. The personal property memorandum from Grandma's estate file. The engraving photograph and Mr. Klein's statement about Ryan asking to have it removed. The doctor's letter confirming Grandma's mental competency at the time the documents were created. Mrs. Alvarez's written statement about the argument she overheard. And Ryan's own messages to his friend about making the engraving disappear before anyone noticed. The room became very quiet. Ryan's attorney shifted in his seat. Ryan stared at the table. The judge studied each document with care. Then Ryan's attorney stood and said they had one more piece of evidence. He produced a folded handwritten note. Ryan's attorney said it was a letter from Grandma Eleanor, written after the will update, stating that she had changed her mind and wanted Ryan to have the ring for his marriage. Ryan looked at the judge and nodded slowly. And my stomach dropped. For one long, terrible moment, I stared at that note and felt doubt creeping in from every direction. What if there had been a moment I did not know about? What if Grandma had changed her mind and not told me? The note was in her handwriting. Or it looked like her handwriting. Ryan looked across the room at me with calm, steady eyes, and for the first time in this whole fight, I felt the ground shift. Then Ms. Harris stood. She asked Ryan's attorney one simple question. She asked why, if this letter existed, it had never been given to the estate attorney before or during the probate process. Ryan's attorney said Grandma had given it to Ryan privately as a personal message, not a legal document. Ms. Harris accepted that answer and moved on. She asked to see the date on the note. The date written at the top was 3 days after Grandma was supposedly well enough to write it. I opened my file folder and pulled out the hospital record. On that exact date, Grandma had been admitted after a fall. The attending nurse's notes stated clearly that her hand coordination was significantly affected and that she had been unable to hold a pen or sign documents on that day or the 2 days following. Then I looked at the note again, more carefully, and I noticed something that made my hands go still. The note used the phrase family legacy, word for word. The exact phrase Ryan had used in his speech at the engagement party. Grandma never spoke like that. Not once in all the years I knew her. The judge ordered a handwriting review. The court recessed while the process was arranged. In the days that followed, the family divided. Aunt Patricia called me and said she was beginning to believe me but was afraid of what would happen to the family if the truth came out completely. 2 cousins texted me saying Ryan had been telling them I was obsessed and vindictive. And then my mother called. She said, in a very quiet voice, that maybe I should settle. Take some money, stop fighting, and let everyone move on. She said I was hurting people who loved me and that sometimes peace mattered more than being right. I sat on my kitchen floor after that call with Grandma's old cardigan pulled into my lap. It still smelled faintly like her. I cried for a while, not the quiet kind, the kind that shakes your whole body. I had expected Ryan to fight me. I had expected Aunt Patricia to ask me to be patient. But I had not expected my mother to tell me to give up. I sat there for a long time. Eventually, I set the cardigan down and reached into the pocket out of habit, the way I used to do when Grandma wore it and I would fish out her grocery lists for her. My fingers found something small and stiff. I pulled it out and held it under the kitchen light. It was a tiny paper claim ticket from Klein & Sons Fine Jewelry. I looked at the date printed at the bottom. Grandma had picked something up from the jeweler the same week she updated her will. I went back to Klein & Sons the next morning with the claim ticket. Mr. Klein looked at the number printed on it, then went to the back room. He was gone for several minutes. When he returned, he was carrying a small sealed envelope and a USB drive. He explained that when Grandma came in to have the engraving done, her hands were already quite shaky. She had not been able to write a long letter the way she wanted to. So she had asked Mr. Klein if she could record a short video message in the shop's private back office, where it would be stored safely with her service file. He had agreed. He said he had completely forgotten about it because it had never been connected to the estate file. No one had ever come asking. He handed me the USB drive. We watched it together on his office computer. Grandma Eleanor sat in a wooden chair in the back room of Klein & Sons, frail but completely clear-eyed. She looked directly at the camera. She spoke without notes. She said the ring belonged to me, Michelle, because I had loved her without asking for anything in return. She said Ryan had already asked for the ring while she was still alive and had become angry when she refused. Then she looked at the camera one last time and said, "If this ring ever causes trouble, look inside it." I put the truth where greed would not think to search. Mr. Klein closed the laptop and looked at me. He said, "This will end it." At the next hearing, Grandma's video was played in the courtroom. The room went completely still. Grandma's voice, calm and clear, filled that quiet space and said my name. I watched Ryan's face go from composed to pale in the space of about 10 seconds. Aunt Patricia, sitting 2 rows behind me, began to cry. My mother covered her mouth with both hands. Claire sat in the back row of the public gallery, and she did not look away from Ryan once during the entire video. The handwriting review results also arrived that day. The expert's report stated that the handwritten note Ryan had presented was not consistent with Grandma Eleanor's known handwriting. The letter formations were irregular in ways that did not match her style, and the pressure patterns were different from samples taken from her authenticated documents. Ryan's attorney asked for a recess. The judge granted 15 minutes. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Claire stopped Ryan before he could walk away. I did not hear every word, but I saw her hand him back a small folder, the one that had held the wedding paperwork they had been planning together. Her voice was steady when she spoke. She said he had lied about a dead woman to make her feel like she was gaining something real. She said she would not marry a man who stole from love and called it legacy. She turned and walked away. Ryan stood alone in the hallway as the life he had built using Grandma's ring fell apart around him. The court confirmed my right to the ring in a written order issued 4 days later. Ryan was directed to stop asserting ownership and to cover a portion of the legal expenses connected to the dispute. The judge also noted in the order that the matter of the false handwritten note could be pursued further if I chose to do so. I did not celebrate. I sat in my car outside the courthouse and just breathed. Aunt Patricia called first and apologized. She said she had been a coward and that she was sorry she had asked me to let it go when she should have listened. My mother came to my apartment that evening and stood in my doorway with tears already running down her face. She said she was sorry. She said she had chosen her own comfort over my truth and that it had been wrong. I looked at her for a long moment before I spoke. I told her I accepted her apology, but I also told her something I needed her to hear. I said that I had needed a mother when everyone was calling me jealous and greedy, and she had waited until proof made it easy to believe me. She nodded and did not try to explain it away. That honesty was what allowed us to begin again. Ryan called late that same night, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it. He said he had made mistakes but that I had not needed to destroy him. I told him I had not destroyed him. I had only stopped covering for him. Then I walked upstairs, slid Grandma's ring onto my finger, and felt the engraved words press gently against my skin. For Michelle, when she is ready. E.W. I was ready. I had been ready for a long time.